Are you a DIYer? Do you like taking normal, everyday household objects and making them better, beefing them up, making them magical? That lost the thread for a second. The Rune Knight fighter might be the right subclass for you. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and we're back with the subclass deep dives. And today we are diving back into Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for the Rune Knight. Look at him. It's awesome. I love this subclass specifically for certain campaigns, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But we are continuing the subclasses in Tasha's. We've been doing it since the book came out a while ago. There's a lot of subclasses, and kind of took a break for a second. But we're back. One of my favorite things about Tasha's book as a whole is the blurbs that we get from Tasha throughout the book for different sections and things like that. And the Rune Knight fighter is one of my favorites. She says, "You're researching ancient arts and drawing runes. It's okay to just say you want to be a witch." Which, yeah, I mean, this is a great combo class, I would say, for somebody that wants to be a fighter but isn't interested in the full spell casting that the Eldritch Knight will bring you. They don't want to deal with like spell slots and preparing spells and all that kind of business. They just want some cool abilities that they can do without all the baggage of joining a church that you get with a paladin. And from a flavor standpoint, this I feel like really marries the concepts of the wizard with a fighter, in that you're seeking out ancient knowledge, ancient lore, ancient magic, and then you're applying it to your armor and weapons. And you get some really cool mechanical features out of that marrying. So all of the Rune Knight stuff is built around the lore of the giants and the history of the giants. So if you're playing in a setting that has a strong connection to giant history or giants in general, then this is going to be a great subclass to utilize in your campaign or short adventure. And if you're doing Storm King's Thunder, this would be a great subclass to throw in there to really solidify one of the party members with the giants and using the knowledge of the giants oftentimes against them. But I really like this subclass. Me personally, being a big Eberron nerd and currently playing in a game set in Stormreach, it's Kyber Shards, an actual play here on the channel if you want to check it out. I was so, I just, once I dove into the Rune Knight, I was like, I wish I would have picked this subclass, because for those of you that don't know, Stormreach is on an island that used to be ruled by giants like thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago. So you have giant ruins everywhere. The city of Stormreach is built on the ruins of giants that contain giant writing everywhere and stuff. And so it's just such a great setting for a subclass like this. And I feel like if you can find that marriage in your game, as a player or as a DM, you can do some really, really cool things with the Rune Knight fighter. But let's get into the actual mechanical bits before we get into the flavor bits. So first off, bonus proficiencies. You get proficiency in Smith's tools, and you learn how to read, write, and speak giant. Both of these make perfect sense because the flavor of the Rune Knight, as it relates to the mechanics, is that you are etching these giant runes into your arms and armor. So having the Smith's tools makes sense because you're using those to etch the runes into these items. And then being able to read, write, and speak giant, yeah, it's all giant language stuff, and so that makes total sense. If you want to, either as a DM or as a player, if giant doesn't make sense, but there is another ancient civilization that makes more sense for this, good example, once again, going back to Eberron, if you're setting a campaign in Corvair, a different continent, where the goblins had an ancient empire thousands of years ago, and you wanted to switch it and just say, okay, you can read, write, and speak goblin, because that's the flavor that we're going with, is that these runes are goblinoid rather than giant. That's a really easy swap that you can make to make this subclass shine in your setting and in your campaign. Okay, and obviously you're getting all this stuff at third level. initially, because that's when you get to pick your fighter subclass. The next one is Rune Carver. So at this point, buckle up, because we're about to get into kind of a long list of all the different runes that you get to pick from. But you get to pick 2 from the outset out of 4 options that you have at level 3, and then you gain some more options at level 7. But starting off at level 3, you have 2. Then at 7th level, you bump that up to 3 runes that you know. Then at level 10, you get 4, and at 15, you have 5. So these are the runes that you can etch into your armor. Important thing to note is every time you gain a level, you can swap out the runes, because there's always going to be more runes than you can know. There are 6 total, and you can only know up to 5. So you always want to have that flexibility to where you can swap stuff out based on what you're going to be doing in that particular adventure. And I know what you're asking. What are they? I'm about to tell you. A bit more admin before we get into all the different types of runes. So when you finish long rest, you can touch a number of items equal to the number of runes that you know. So starting off 2 and then 3, 4, 5 on up. It has to be a piece of armor, a weapon, a piece of jewelry, a shield, or something that you wear or have on your person. The idea is you're carrying this thing, and that's what imbues you with the power. So you can't like etch it on something that you're going to be leaving behind or giving to someone else. It needs to be something that you are carrying. And some of these runes call for save DCs. The DC is 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus your constitution modifier is the ability score that you ping off of for the save DCs. Since obviously you're not a caster and you don't want that to be contingent on intelligence or something like that. So this is a good catch-all. If you're a fighter, you're probably going to be concerned with your constitution modifier, so it makes sense. Okay, the first one is Cloud Rune, and this might be my favorite one. I might say that after each of them, but I really like Cloud Rune. So first off, the cloud giants are all deceptive and whatnot and shifty, so you get advantage on sleight of hand checks and deception checks. But additionally, if you can see within 30 feet of you a creature being hit by an attack roll, that's important, not failing a save, but it has to be an attack roll. But you see them get hit by an attack roll, you can, as a reaction, pick a different creature you can see within 30 feet of you, not necessarily the same 30 feet, and have the attack hit that creature instead. Using the same roll, range doesn't matter. So if it's a melee attack 30 feet that way, and the target you want to hit is 30 feet that way, they can cover 60 feet with a swing of their sword. So that really provides so many different ways that you can flavor this. Because initially, like, you could say, like, the wind magically carries the strike or something. Or you could, like, say that you're opening up a portal like fog from the clouds of your rune, obscure the target, and cause some kind of magical portal to where the swing of their sword goes flying through the clouds and strikes somebody way over there. Or if it's an arrow, you can just guide it with the clouds and the winds and stuff like that. There's so many different ways that you can flavor this ability, and I love it, and it's so much fun. So yeah, and you can do this once per short or long rest. So every encounter, one time. If you have a party member that's on the brink, they're on the ropes, they're about to get knocked down, you can pull this out and just redirect the attack to someone else. It can't be the same person, though. They do specifically call that out. You can't have somebody hit themselves. It has to be a different target. But if there's only one bad guy left, you could always redirect it at you. If you're the fighter and you have the most hit points or a high AC because you use the same roll, is the other important thing. So just because an attack hits an ally doesn't mean it's going to hit you. It doesn't say that attack hits the target. The target becomes the new target of the original attack. So if they're attacking your wizard who has an AC of 12 and you as a fighter have an AC of 16, let's say, and they roll a 15, you miss. So there's a ton of utility for this, and I really dig it. Next up is the Fire Rune, and this one plays off of the fire giant's ingenuity when it comes to tools and smithing and things like that. So your just base constant bonus is that you double your proficiency bonus for any checks made using tools that you're proficient in. So yeah, that's crazy, especially if you're proficient with multiple tools. That's great. You're proficient with smith tools, definitely, based on this subclass, but any other tool proficiency that you have, disguise kits, calligraphy tools, if you're trying to forge something, it's really good. I think that this will fly under a lot of people's radar in terms of usefulness, like proficiency doubled for tools. But there are many situations where you're using the tools and you make your roll, and that's going to play a big role. I don't think tools get used as much as they should, personally. And that's not indicting any of my games or anything. I just think in general, because I don't use tools enough either in terms of the way that I run games. So just a thought. And then the extra thing is when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can invoke the rune to put fiery shackles on them. So when you initially do it, they take 2d6 additional fire damage off of that attack. And then they have to succeed on a strength saving throw. If they fail, they're restrained. And at the start of every turn, while they remain restrained, they take an additional 2d6 fire damage. They do get to repeat this save at the end of their turn, which, is pretty part and parcel. But an extra 2d6 fire damage at the start of every one of their turns. And strength saving throws are typically not the best. If you're dealing with something that has a high strength score, then sure, they're going to have a good shot. But proficiency in a strength saving throw is not the most common thing. Just off the top of my head, you might be able to pull up a table that says, oh, it's the third most common. Sure. But just based on my reading of it, that's pretty cool to have something based off a strength saving throw. Because you can apply it to a creature that it has a high dexterity or a high intelligence and restrain them. Because if you're using like really intense rules when it comes to casting and somatic gesturing and stuff, then that you might be able to mess up somebody's casting while inflicting damage on them. And you can do this once per short or long rest. Next up is the Frost Rune, this showing the Frost Giants' ability to survive in wilderness and travel great distances. So you get advantage on animal handling checks and intimidation, because anybody that can survive out in the wintry wilderness is worth being scared of. And additionally, as a bonus action, you can increase your sturdiness. So for 10 minutes, you gain a +2 bonus to any strength or constitution ability checks or saving throws. Important point of distinction, attack rolls are not ability checks, so just get that out of your mind. But ability checks or saving throws, a +2 bonus for strength and constitution for 10 minutes, which is a while. And you can do this once per short or long rest. Now, I will say, +2 is not, it's fine at 3rd level. Once you get up to 7th, 10th, 15th level, +2 is going to make a difference so little of the time. I think this is an example of kind of an outdated design choice that was made that now they've kind of remedied by having a lot of things ping off of your proficiency bonus. I think getting to add your proficiency bonus or double it if you already have proficiency in the check, that would have been a better way to go, so that starting out +2 is good, but by the time you're up to 15th level, it's +5, which makes more sense. Or if you don't want to do that, just do advantage. I think that this one is kind of hit or miss. I would rarely see myself taking the Frost Rune and using one of my chances to use a rune on the Frost Rune, unless I knew that I was going to be making intimidation checks or animal handling checks, but never for the bonus action thing of getting the +2 to strength or constitution. 10 minutes is a long time. I will grant you that. That's like 100 rounds of combat. So I will say that is a good hefty duration, but I don't love the +2 being the end all be all. And then the last of the options that you have at 3rd level is the Stone Rune. So starting off, this stone giant, but it's very much evokes like dwelling in a cave or lurking in subterranean areas, because you get insight check, which is good for social encounters, but then you also get dark vision up to 120 feet, which is good because that can help out people that are playing races that already have dark vision. So I will say good call there by making it 120 feet, because that can benefit everybody. And advantage on insight checks is also good. Now, the actual ability for this rune, as a reaction, when a creature you can see within 30 feet of you ends their turn, you can force them to make a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail, they become charmed by you for 1 minute. But while they're charmed in this way, they have a speed of 0 and they are incapacitated and they enter a dreamlike stupor. They get a saving throw at the end of each of their turns. Once they succeed, they break out of it. You can do this once per short or long rest. And this is a really good ability, I would say, because you're taking a combatant out of the fight for a minute. And there's no restrictions here talking about if they take damage, they automatically succeed and end the effect. So they could be in this dreamlike stupor and a party member could run up and attack them and there ain't nothing they can do and they're incapacitated. And yeah, so that's huge to me because for one whole minute, if you are going up against something that has a low wisdom score and a low wisdom saving throw, then you can lock somebody down for virtually the whole encounter. So this is one that I would use very frequently. I think starting off at 3rd level, I would go with Cloud Rune, where I can redirect attacks, and Stone Rune, where I can charm, but charm in a way of incapacitating people. I think those two are your strongest. Games will vary, obviously. A lot of times, the restrained ability of the 2d6 going to be vital. If you're playing a survival campaign where there's a lot of travel and your DM has you make a lot of survival, well, survival is not a constitution thing. If you're having to make constitution checks a lot, then the frost rune would be really good to have. If you know you're going to be dealing with a lot of poison, that'd be a good one to have. So I will say that there are situations for each of these to be effective, less so with the frost rune, just me. But the stone and cloud are my two favorites of the initial batch that you get at 3rd level. At 7th level, when you get up to 3 runes that you can pick from, you get 2 more options. Next one is the Hill Rune, which evokes the resilience of the hill giants. So you have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. So if you're going into a swamp, take it. I know some swamp things do acid damage, but if you know you're going to be up against poison things, this is a great rune to just have in your back pocket and go out with it. And then as your invocation for the rune, as a bonus action, you can invoke it and gain resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage for 1 minute. Just full stop. Any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, resistance for a minute. And that's once per short or long rest. And yeah, this is great. This is a good one. Because it gives you that additional resilience as a frontline fighter, your capacity to take more hits because you're taking half the damage that another party member would. And if you're combining this combo with the Cloud Rune, so you can redirect an attack that is going to do a devastating amount of damage to an ally, and you have to redirect it to you, and you just take half the damage. That's wonderful synergy. That's the subclass working optimally. So yeah, there's that's a good way to use it. Anyway, and then there's the Storm Rune. This one, the passive things that you get. Advantage on Arcana checks, and you cannot be surprised as long as you are not incapacitated. Those are good. Those are very good in very disparate situations. Obviously, the Arcana thing, if you're on a fact-finding mission, great. That's going to be very helpful. If you are out wandering the forest and there's bandits or wild animals that will ambush you, not being able to be surprised, also great. But the invocation of the rune. Okay. As a bonus action, for 1 minute, you can enter a prophetic state that lasts for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Obviously, I think most everything ends once you're incapacitated. But anyway, until the state ends, when you or another creature that you can see makes an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw, you can use your reaction to grant them advantage or disadvantage on that roll. Let's break that down for a second. And it does say once you've invoked this rune, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. All of them are short or long rests, in case I forgot to say that on one of them. Bonus action to enter the state. It lasts for 1 minute. Every round, so 10 times, if combat goes a full minute, 10 times, you get to grant advantage or disadvantage on a roll. That is huge. Like, I think it's not game breaking. Don't take me as this saying, oh, they broke the game. It's just really good. It's a really good ability that offers you so much flexibility, because if you are able to look at the battlefield and see who's in the most need of landing an attack or getting missed by an attack or making sure that they pass their saving throw, or your wizard's doing a huge, like, spending a 9th level spell slot, let's say it's into the campaign, and they really want this to land, you can grant disadvantage on the saving throw against that spell. There's so much that you can do with this. It offers so much utility that I like. I think that this is definitely the MVP of the runes. It's a must take. By the time you're 7th level, you're getting 3. I would definitely have Storm be just a lock in. Every combat, I am bonus action, first round, entering this state. Because, generally speaking, you're going to be taking a short rest between most combats. So, most combats, you're going to have this locked and loaded and ready to go. And you can just grant advantage every round. I can count on one hand the number of combats I've been in that have lasted longer than 10 rounds. And so every round you get to just advantage, disadvantage, disadvantage, advantage. Which, yeah, is great. Now, you don't get to do opportunity attacks. You are sacrificing something because you are using your reaction every turn. So you also have to be aware of that. Because as a DM, I would bait you. I would bait you. I would be having people engaged with you, take off running. You want to do an opportunity attack? No, I don't. It's like, okay. You sure? So, yeah, just be cognizant that you're using your reaction every round for this. And if you do something else with your reaction, you can't do it anymore. But I like it. So, yeah, like we said, 3rd level you get 2, 7th you get 3, 10th you get 4, and 15th you get 5. So you basically pick one that you aren't going to be running around with, Frost Rune. And yeah, Storm Rune I would have locked and loaded. Cloud, Fire, and Hill would be the next 3 that I would have really regularly, because Hill gets you that resistance against bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. Cloud redirecting attacks, and Stone you're getting to just take somebody out of the combat. So there's a lot of it depends largely on your play style, what you're going to want to be able to do, but that's what I would really look at. Fire and Frost are good. They're very situational. The Fire less so if you enjoy the ability to potentially restrain. My only thing with the Fire rune, though, is oftentimes you're going to be going up against things that have a high strength score. As a fighter, you're going to be at the front line fighting something that is going to be trying to hit you back. And so I would be concerned. I know I said that strength is a good stat to target because proficiency isn't that common. But if you're dealing with something with a high strength score, that kind of offsets it. Okay, the other 3rd level feature that you get with the Rune Knight is Giant's Might, which as a bonus action, you can invoke this for 1 minute. If you are smaller than large, you become large along with everything that you are carrying on you. If you don't have room to become large, then your size doesn't change. But large creatures can squeeze into 5-foot spaces. So unless you're already squeezing, then I think you can make this transformation. You just may be at a disadvantage if you're squeezing as a large person. But ultimately, this would be up to DM discretion in terms of whether or not you have enough space to make the transformation. You have advantage on strength checks and saving throws. This does not include melee attack rolls, at least based on my reading and how I would rule it at the table, because just having advantage on every melee roll would be broken. It would be broken. So yeah, just strength ability checks and strength saving throws. You can still break the game with this, but we'll get into that in a second. And then once each turn, one of your attacks that you make with a weapon or an unarmed strike can deal 1d6 extra damage on a hit to a target. Now, let's talk about, well, no, we're going to get into it later because we're not done with the Giant's Might business. It gets more. So, well, we'll get to it. 7th level, in addition to getting more runes that you know and access to more runes, you get the Runic Shield, which is when you can see another creature within 60 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force the attacker to re-roll the d20 and use the new roll. It's a reaction, so keep in mind that a lot of these other things are using your reaction. So a lot of reaction stuff. So you need to keep track of this in terms of what you want to use when and what's important. So keep that in mind. And you can do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. And then you get back all of those uses when you finish a long rest. So you get a lot more uses, especially at level 7. You'll have 3 by that point, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then by the time you're getting up to 15th level, you'll be getting 5 uses of this every long rest, which should be more than enough, but your mileage may vary. I think it's fine. You're essentially imposing disadvantage, but forcing them to use the new roll. But the forcing to use a new roll thing is the doozy, because if they rolled high and then they roll a crit, sorry, friend. So they do use the new roll. It's not disadvantage. There is a distinction there. At 10th level, you get Great Stature, which you are permanently altered by the giant magic that you've been using. You roll 3d4 and grow that number of inches permanently in your height. And then your additional damage with your Giant's Might feature, the 1d6, is now upgraded to a 1d8. And I put out questions on the Discord server, linked down in the description below, for anybody that might have questions about the Rune Knight fighter. And Sadie asked on our Discord, she asked whether or not this feature I felt like was kind of underwhelming, that you're growing either 3 inches or 12 inches. And then additionally, just getting that slight bump in the damage. I'm fine with it, because every subclass has one of these features where, you know, it's just a little bump in something, or something very narrative or flavor based. And so I think this is just combining 2 of those. I feel like if it was one or the other, it would be either pointless or boring, because permanently growing a certain amount of inches isn't going to have a mechanical effect. It's just a fun thing that happens, which, like I said, a lot of subclasses have that feature baked in of a fun thing. And then bumping it up to a 1d8, I think pairing these was a smart call, because at 10th level, at least me, I would be excited to roll those 3d4 and hope that I get a high number and get to shoot up in height. But then also having the 1d6 go to a 1d8 is also good. So I'm not super let down by it. I could understand if you're in a party full of people that get really cool things at 10th level, that you might not be too excited about it, but personally, I don't have a problem with it. And also, Sadie in our Discord asked about the runes themselves, and whether or not I think it would be a good idea for a player or DM to make their own runes, make custom ones for, maybe there's a custom type of giant, or you want to do an additional one, or twist one in an interesting way. And that's fine. Like anything homebrew, be careful. I would keep everything on a short or long rest. I would have it be either a bonus action or a reaction, just because everything else is based around that. Everything, like if it's one that's a long effect, typically it's activated by a bonus action. And then to actually use the thing like the Storm Rune, it's your reaction to use it during the window of time. So I would keep that in mind if you're designing something to be customized for these runes. Is the way that it plays in the action economy is really reaction heavy, and you're having to make some choices round to round about, as a fighter, am I going to opportunity attack? I'm going to use my reaction on one of these runes. Which one am I going to use them on? So yeah, I would. And Sadie also asked if I wanted to provide a custom order design one. And just off the top of my head, I obviously have not play tested this, so balance may be horribly off. But if there's like a necromantic order of giants or an undead giant that you wanted to have a rune for, I think doing something like false life would be really interesting, allowing the fighter to bestow upon themselves temporary hit points in the middle of a heated battle. I think is a function that could play well in the the ecosystem of the Rune Knight while not breaking anything or stepping on anything else's toes. You could do it maybe based off the Giant's Might damage die if you wanted it to grow over time. So it starts off as a 1d6 temporary hit points, or maybe you could do plus your Constitution modifier, and then over time it would get bigger and bigger and bigger. Or you can make it 1d6 or a d6 per proficiency bonus or something like that. So that's something interesting that you could do that I think you don't get currently with the way the Rune Knight is. At 15th level, Master of Runes. You get to invoke all of your rune things twice now, per short or long rest. So, yeah, you're at 15th level, so you're supposed to be breaking the game essentially. And yeah, being able to do this stuff multiple times, the Cloud Rune, the Storm Rune, Hill Rune, all these things, being able to do them multiple times is really good for those combats where you don't get a chance for a short rest in between. For those ones that are a long duration, like the Hill Rune being 1 minute where you get resistance, or the Frost Rune, the 10-minute one. But the other ones where it's like one and done, like the Cloud Rune, where you get to do it one time and then you're done, getting to do that multiple times in a combat is very helpful. Sadie also asked in the Discord about the 15th level feature, Master of Runes, about it's twice as it's written, but now that we've moved towards a lot of things being based off proficiency modifier, whether or not that would make more sense here. And I don't think it would, because you have to remember you're getting this at 15th level, which at that point your proficiency bonus would be +5. And I don't think it's going to go up anymore, if I recall correctly. Let me double check that. Okay, yeah. So when you hit 17, it goes up to 6. So you would be getting one more at level 17. But then you're talking about taking a class feature from 2 to 5 off rip. And that's a lot, especially when you're dealing with stuff as powerful as a lot of these runes can be. If you're able to do Cloud Rune 5 times per short rest, that's effectively getting to do it every round of combat. I mean, most combats. So yeah, I would keep it at 2 personally. And then the last one, kind of the capstone feature at 18th level, Runic Juggernaut. So you can become huge with your Giant's Might feature instead of large. You become huge. Your Giant's Might damage increases to 1d10, and your reach increases by 5 feet. So that is all huge. But you can become gargantuan through Enlarge Reduce as a spell. If you have somebody in your party that has Enlarge Reduce, you can become gargantuan. Or if you're a Dorgar, you can become gargantuan on your own. So that's a big thing. And up to this point, you can become huge using that. If you make a Dorgar Rune Knight, you can become huge starting at 3rd level. Now, Enlarge Reduce is a concentration spell, so if you're a Dorgar doing it to yourself, then as you're getting hit, you're going to have to make concentration saving throws. An important thing to note. And also, with the Enlarge component, you're adding an additional 1d4 damage because your weapons grow in size as well. So, yeah. But once again, that's not where things truly go off the rails. If you build a Rune Knight fighter built around grappling, you can grapple gargantuan things like that, and you have advantage on those checks because a grapple check is a strength check. So you have advantage on those checks to grapple things. And then combined with your other Rune Knight abilities, you could invoke or impose disadvantage on the opposing check against you using your Storm Rune. You can see the creature making the ability check within 60 feet of you because you're grappling it. And so you can use your reaction to force it to have disadvantage on the opposing check that you have advantage on. And then you can just grapple massive things and like lock them down during the combat. And yeah, that's wild to me. Now, once again, a lot of your stuff is based off of reactions, so keep that in mind. But Yeah, I would need to see it in play, but in my brain, that seems really potent to be able to just manhandle anything up to gargantuan size on the battlefield. Oh, and also if you're using the stone rune where you can charm that charm thing that incapacitates them, then you just succeed automatically on grapple checks against incapacitated targets. And in order to escape it, it's once again a contested check. So even if you've already used your reaction to impose disadvantage before, you still have advantage on your contested strength athletics check for them to escape. And if you're dealing with stuff that isn't gargantuan, let's say you're huge at third level, like you are, and you grab a medium creature, you grapple a medium creature, that's two size categories smaller than you, which means while you're grappling it, your movement isn't halved anymore. You can move your full speed while moving a grappled creature with you. So if you're trying to kidnap somebody, you're just gonna get to go. Yeah, is just there's so much you can do. So yeah, that's the big thing with the Giant's Might size altering stuff, especially if you have a party member that can cast enlarge reduce, or you're a Durgar slash Grey Dwarf, depending on your setting, that can do it to themselves. Then build a fighter that doesn't attack people. Build a fighter that grapples people, moves people around, and yeah, you can be very, very, very effective in that manner. So those are all the features, and I've kind of gone into my ideas on playing the Rune Knight. But from a flavor standpoint, it's so much fun. It's so interesting. It's so captivating. I really like this subclass because of the amount of utility you can get out of it, paired with the type of character that you can play. Somebody that's very inquisitive, that's you can play like an archaeologist going out to find new runes and discover them and integrate them into their armor and their arms and unlock new abilities. And that is so interesting and fun and different from your typical fighter. A rune knight with a high intelligence, from a flavor standpoint, obviously you're getting no mechanical benefit, but a rune knight with a high intelligence makes perfect sense because you're that type of person that's going to go out and try to find and learn new interesting things. Or you can build a normal fighter that just was raised in a giant clan, raised amongst giants, and learned this stuff and knew it out the gate. And in terms of running for a rune knight, I I would talk to the player, obviously, but the way that I would enjoy both playing it and running for the player is those seventh level runes are unknown to the player character, and they discover them around the time that they're going to be turning seventh level. And so it's this new exciting thing that they learn. And maybe them unlocking the extra damage with the Giant's Might stuff and getting even bigger. That's all knowledge that they're getting and learning over time. It's not just innate things that are growing within them, it's them learning more about giant cultures and the history of the giants and the magic that they used and getting to grow into that. And I would love to not center a campaign around a player character, Rune Knight, but have a campaign that deals with giant society in such a way in the history of the giants to where that Rune Knight feels like they're in the thick of it and they're getting to learn so much about their abilities and where they came from and where their power came from. And it can be such a fun confluence of role playing and lore and gaming, and it would be so much fun. So I definitely love the Rune Knight. I know a lot of people think it's broken. I would disagree. I don't even think it's like the most broken fighter subclass personally. I just think it's fun. It's got a lot of utility. Sure, if you have somebody that is cheesier than a plate of nachos, they can use this subclass to ruin encounters. That's when you as a DM have a conversation with that player and be like, "Hey, let's talk about this because that wasn't fun for me. It probably wasn't fun for anybody else. Or if it is fun for everybody, then who cares? Just let them go wild." But your mileage may vary in that respect. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting, and I wish I were playing one. So I hope you all enjoyed this return to the Subclass Deep Dive series. Let me know what you want to see next down in the comments below, what subclasses you would like me to dive deep on. Additionally, I've been going through Candlekeep Mysteries and looking at the adventures there, but are there other adventures that you would want me to look at? Some of the longer campaign books? Well, what do you want to see? And I know I did miss a couple of books in the interim, Strixhaven and Wild Beyond the Winterlight, as well as some others, I believe. So if there are books that you would like to see me do a deep dive on, I know we're past the release window for a lot of them, but if you would like to see book reviews on them, let me know down below and I'll take a look at the books and talk about them. So thank you all so much for watching. I have been Eric, and I will see you next time.